Welcome to Walsh College's Leading Ladies podcast series. This is our first inaugural episode. We're so excited that you're joining us, and it's perfectly timed for March, which is Women's History Month. So today, I am so grateful and so excited to have a leading lady with me here in our amazing Walsh College Creator Lab studio. And the vision behind our Leading Ladies series is really to highlight women leaders and entrepreneurs who are making massive impact and a positive difference in the world. And I'm so excited to be joined here with JoJo Dries. JoJo, welcome to Leading Ladies podcast. Welcome to Walsh College. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Suzy. I'm honored to be here. This is very exciting.
Well, and JoJo, I wanted to share a couple bullet points about your background and who you are with our audience. So you are the founder, director, and as I like to say, chief angel officer for On the Wings of Angels, which is a nonprofit, and I'll let you talk a little bit about that and the great work that you're doing with folks there. You are an author and keynote speaker, and we have your book right here, and we'll definitely talk about that as well. And the proud wife of Paul and mother of two boys, Lucas and Paulie, and I've met them. They are wonderful. And I love this. Dog mom of Zobella. I love that too. You're an advocate for female empowerment, empowered women, and living your authentic life in every way you can, and really being an active voice in the community. So welcome, JoJo.
Thank you, Suzy. Again, I'm honored to be here. This is very exciting. I look forward to our conversation today.
Oh, and this is so perfect too, because when I reached out, I remember thinking, who is going to be our first leading lady? And we were already talking about the incredible work you're doing. So tell us a little bit about On the Wings of Angels. What is that? How did that come about? Where were you most recently before that? And just your whole journey from there. And we'll talk through it and highlight everything you're doing, because it's incredible work. And what is great about this is how you came into the role that you're in and the human being you became to get there. And I think that's what's so exciting to share with our audience. So
yes. Well, I appreciate it and look forward to this whole conversation. Well, On the Wings of Angels was founded in 2022, at the end of 2022, after several folks and several of my friends, family, my husband told me, you know what, JoJo, you've been helping women for a long time. Get out of toxicity and abuse. And it's time you started a nonprofit to get community members to help you help others. And so we had a mortgage business. So for a long time, I've been in the mortgage industry since I was actually very young, since I was 18. And so it's been a couple of decades now. And what I did is throughout the years, I was a loan officer. I helped folks get into homes. So already we were serving others, we were serving the community and helping them with a first-time home, second-time home, whatever it might be. So I was in mortgage and real estate for many years and was not exactly fulfilled, was not finding total fulfillment in my career. And you know, Suzy, we spend so much time at work. I see you just enjoying, you know, your role as the president here and the chief energy officer of Walsh. And I think to myself, that's what I want. I want a fulfilling career. So in 22, we applied with the IRS. We got our 501c3 designation December, right around Christmas.
Wow.
Yes.
Awesome.
And then in March of 23, what we did is we launched our website. So my husband and I, we invested in a wonderful website development company. They created a beautiful website for us. We invested our own money and funds in that because we believed in this mission so strongly that we said we have to have something powerful for folks to go to and say, okay, what do you do as a nonprofit? So in March, we launched of 23. And then, Suzy, as you know, in September, due to, you know, several outlying circumstances, especially being in the mortgage industry, I hit a wall and truly had almost what we would call a mental breakdown. And I don't say that lightly. It was a very tough month for me. But at the same time, we called it the month of JoJo. Again,
so can I just highlight this for a minute? So
yes.
First of all, I love this whole story because what you're sharing is just really, it's your heart. It's your authentic heart. And you're saying, look, it's even, and so what we'll get into really is what motivated you to even begin On the Wings of Angels. But one thing that really has impressed me about you, JoJo, is that you look at adversity, you're not dismissing it. You see it's difficult, you see it's a challenge, but you also see what you can do with it and how you can bring it forward. And we talked about that a little bit with the book, Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill, where he says, in every adversity, there's the seed of equal or equivalent advantage. And so the way that you've moved through life and how you've seen that, and this is just a great example, because I remember we actually met in September and you told me, hold on, things are a little bit weird. I'm working through some stuff. And then what came from that was even better. So sometimes we have to hit those speed bumps in life, in leadership, in business, so we can go to the next level. And I see that every day here at Walsh. We're always solving problems. We're facing challenges. We're working with our students through their challenges and helping them see how they can be growth moments, growth opportunities.
Yes. And I feel like for this type of a podcast, Leading Ladies podcast, I think it's important for the audience and for people listening to understand that you are going to face these major hurdles where you think that you've reached the end, or what's my purpose, or what's my destiny, or how did I, get here, and where's the next step? And so that authenticity is super important. So I'm going to touch on September, but before I go to that, so 5 years ago, I wrote this book, The Lotus. And the reason I wrote it is it was very therapeutic for me, but it was also a moment in time in which I knew that the universe needed to hear this story. They needed to hear the authenticity that, yes, I'm, now living my dream life, and we'll get into what that means. But having said that, we needed to write a book to say, look, these were the steps I took to get out of the hellhole I was in, and this is how you can do the same. So when I wrote that book, this was 5 years ago, I had a vision that I was going to help thousands and hundreds of thousands of women. Well, when that happened and I was doing the motivational speeches and I was on TV and I was on the radio and nationally and locally, it again hit a wall. And I thought, wow, here I thought I was going to have this major platform and the book was going to launch me into it. But as with many things in life, there is much growth that has to happen until you're totally ready to step into that leading role. And so when you think about, okay, I wrote the book 5 years ago, but really launched this nonprofit just last year, it took those 5 years of growth. I became a better woman in the last 5 years.
I love this because, and you and I, we do this so much where you'll say something and I'll say, okay, what about this? But what the difference is, and when I heard you say that, is you wrote this book and that was very important. It was cathartic. It was very healing, yet it might still have been you and JoJo. And now what you're saying is perhaps the universe, we're people of faith, so we talk about God. Everything sort of worked to say, well, wait a minute, I really want you to do this for others. And the second we do for others and we're massively focused on making a bigger contribution, everything opens up. And so I love that. The book needed to be there because you were able to authentically tell your own story of growing up in a toxic home environment. We can get into that a little bit as you would like. And then also how you got out. But then there was this vision of, and I love how you said you had this vision of helping people.
I did.
Because that's part of visionary leadership, is setting a vision, putting that out into the universe and seeing it come to fruition. So then talk a little bit about, if you can, go back and share, what was it that, really happened? And you don't have to share in too much detail, but I know, you do talk about it in the book, that really brought you forward to say, okay, my biggest pain in my life will be my biggest mission going forward.
Yes. And somebody told me many years ago, she said, your misery will become your mission. And
I didn't,
and I didn't totally understand what that meant. So my misery is, I grew up in a super toxic environment. My dad and my brother were very abusive humans. So my dad, molested me, raped me, beat me up. My brother participated in the physical abuse. And there was a lot of control in that environment. So we had, everything was controlled. I couldn't have friends outside the family. There was every step that you took, was monitored. When cell phones came to be, it was all about, who are you calling? Who are you texting? Every step of the way was controlled. We had we were homeschooled, had a home business, and we were home churched, meaning that, again, that was also part of the control. So everything was in the house. There
very
was
insular.
Very insular, very sheltered, which allowed the abuse to continue. So we're here at a college, and I always say to myself, education, knowledge is power. And that is what was withholden from us. We did not have the proper education in really any area of life. So it wasn't just, schooling, it was just how to operate in a world that existed outside of our circle. So having said that, again, that whole time I knew this was wrong. There was nothing in me that said, okay, this is a normal way of life, and yes, did we cover it? Yes. Did we hide it? Yes. Nobody knew about any of that. But that whole time I knew it was wrong. Unlike many of my siblings who still to this day just feel like this is a normal way of life and that I'm, outside of what's normal. So having said that, throughout the years, I kept fighting against that whole mentality of abuse and the way that we were raised. I was told that you're instigating things. I was told you are the cause of his abuse, which many, and whoever's listening, you need to know that many abuse victims and survivors are told that it's their fault. They're the ones causing this, that if they weren't behaving this way, the abuser wouldn't be abusing them. Mm-hmm. So then throughout the years, I kept trying to get out. I didn't know how. I was told you'll never succeed without us. You're going to fall on your face if you go into the world without this, protection. They called it protection. It was abuse. And then throughout the years, I couldn't find a way out until I was 28, 29, and started dating somebody outside of the family that the family didn't know, right? Like somebody that was not part of the friend group. But before I talk about that, I want to talk a little bit about my love story.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay. Yes, we'll talk about Paul. We'll talk about Paul because I know that story has got so many amazing connections and just coincidences. We'll talk about that. But also, I really want to highlight this. So, this was a really important episode to do because I knew it would be deep. Yes. I knew it would be intense, but I knew it would really lay the framework, lay the groundwork for folks to see that in life and leadership, you will have troubles. There will be difficulties. There will be challenges. And too often we look at successful women, successful professionals and say, oh, they just had it easy, or I wish I could be like them, or it must be so nice to ... right?
Yes.
And you don't see the struggle behind it. You don't always see what it was that brought that person to that point and how many times they might not have felt they could go beyond that. Like you said, I couldn't find a way out.
Yes.
I was told if I left, I wouldn't make it. I'd fall on my face. And you wrote this beautiful book that shows people, literally it's like how do you get out of these situations? And On the Wings of Angels, such a beautiful name for your nonprofit, by the way, is the actual way that you can do that. But I love how you say you have to be ready. Yes. So that's really important is that the person might say, I want to get out, I'm ready. I just don't have the tools and the resources. And that's real help. It's not enabling.
Yes.
It's real help and it's empowering. But I wanted to highlight that because so many times we see leaders, we see business owners, we see entrepreneurs, and they're successful, but they've come a long way and we don't always know the story. Yes. So that's important because if you're in a tough situation or you're going through that adversity, know that if you keep going, you're going to build yourself.
Yes.
And I think about this in my own life. I had to build myself. I'm continually doing that.
Yes.
You're continually saying, oh, where am I not leading? Where do I need to up level? Where did I make a mistake and I need to grow? And it's those individuals that we'll see in the long term that are successful, that are fulfilled, that are happy, and are able then to give back and help others. And that's what it's really about. It's getting to a certain point in life where you can say, okay, I've gotten myself out of the struggle, out of the pain.
Yes.
Now I'm going to make sure I'm focusing massively on helping others. And that's when we go to our next level and our best selves. But
yes. And one of the steps, which you briefly mentioned, one of the steps that helped me get out is to surround myself with folks that were doing something that I wanted. So again, the podcast is Leading Ladies. I surrounded myself with leading ladies.
Oh, I love this.
Women that had accomplished things that my mom wasn't, that my little circle of our friend group wasn't accomplishing, because they were all the same. Yep. It was all like this cookie cutter human. And I looked outside and I said, okay, these are the types of women I want to be like. So I kept asking questions. How did you get to and this is still one of my favorite questions. How did you get to where you're at today? Wow. And I did that with so many of the people that I did have access to whenever I was able to see that, okay, this is, and it could be a TV show. It could be, a news article I read. It could be whatever it might have been that helped me get out. And that's so important.
You said something so amazing there, which is we are the people that we're surrounded with and we are our environment. And many times we don't realize that. And it's like there's a saying, I think Jim Rohn said, you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with.
Yes.
So if you look at your life, it's a perfect result and product of your environment, of who are you listening to, right?
Yes.
And many times, even if we can't be surrounded by those leading people in our lives, I always say, get an Audible book.
Yes.
Listen to podcasts every day. Pour into your brain people who have done what you want to do, been where you were, and are living their best life, living where you want to go. Don't listen to people that just talk about it and haven't done it, right?
Yes.
There's a lot of those out there.
Yes.
And we know that in the business world, there's a lot of, what do they call it? I don't call this flossing. It's like, oh, I'm really this, but then you find out they're not. It's like, no, I want to study and learn from people that have done the walk, that have done the very thing that they're talking about, so that I can learn. And you have the roadmap. So that's so important.
Books were fascinating. Yeah. I mean, we talked about how this was maybe a bookstore library before this studio.
Isn't this weird?
Right?
This was our former bookstore,
yes,
which we all know COVID kind of changed everything with how we do books and how we do learning. And now we're sitting in this podcast studio, which is incredible.
And books were a huge part. And I talk about the books that influenced me in my book, but two of the major ones were, one was called If You Want to Get Out of the Boat, if you want to walk on water, you have to get out of the boat.
Wow.
And the other one was called How to Get Out of That Pit by Beth Moore. So Beth Moore talks about how we sometimes find ourselves in a pit. There's like different ways to get in a pit. You might have been pushed into the pit. You might have fell into the pit. You might have been born into the pit. Like there's different ways to be in a pit. You might just slip into the pit. But some people make a bed in the pit. They make their home in the pit. They put pictures on the walls. They put all the dirt together to put a pillow together, and they make themselves super comfortable in this pit.
Oh,
and some people find a way to get out of the pit. And no matter what, come hell or high water, they're getting out of that pit. They get out of the pit. They try to bring others from the pit out with them, and some of them are able to, and some people want to just stay there. And it's a principle and a book that I've followed like pretty much since I read it in every area of my life, because we're going to constantly find ourselves in pits.
This is so good.
Right?
Oh,
it's
so
not going to ever end. You're always going to find in different areas of your life, you're going to end up in a pit sometime. And so the question is, are we going to get comfortable in that pit, or are we going to get out of there?
I love it.
And so read the books. I mean, for me, the access was very limited, and I still found a way out. I mean, we live in the United States of America, so I often think I could have left at 18, right? Mm-hmm. But I didn't have the resources, and I wasn't ready. And there was one last book I want to mention, too. It's called Jump Without a Net, or yes, Jump Without a Net. And the book talks about how often in life we need to jump, even though we don't see the net there. And it talks about like the circus, folks and professionals like that when they're jumping, they don't often see that net, but they know it's there,
right,
and it'll appear if they need it.
I love that.
So these concepts, right? And this is what helped me get out. And part of all of that, part of the catalyst was, there's many things in life that move us. And one of those things is love. And I think it's the catalyst to so much of our triumphs or our failures. And so it's the best of both worlds. So I loved a boy at 9 years old, Paul. And he's my husband now, as we all know. So the story goes that I met this man when I was 9. When I was 9, he was 13. We met at church camp. And when I saw him, I said, this is the guy I'm going to marry. And everyone in my life thought I was,
Okay, wait, I just want to highlight that real quick. So this is now the second of probably over 100 visions you've had where you're like, at 9 years old, this is the man I'm going to marry. And I know that a lot of people will say that about a lot of things at that age, but I really want to highlight that you have this incredible ability and incredible vision that when you say something, when you declare it, it happens. And I just think this is such a beautiful story with Paul. So I just want to highlight that.
And I think it's very important that people, when you talked about leaders, how we get to where we're at, it's important that, people talk about whether it's manifestation or, visualizing something. It's that the universe responds to it. Like there's those stories about you just keep knocking and the person's going to give it to you because you're just like persistent.
Well, the other thing what I love about this is the timeline. So one of the things we're talking about too is just this possibility that there's more of a quantum entanglement in leadership than we may think. In quantum physics, there's been so many recent developments in quantum physics. In 2022, there were 3 physicists that won the Nobel Prize for advancement in quantum entanglement, and the idea that you can have 2 entities, 2 particles in the subatomic realm, and they're connected, even though they're separated by light years apart, right? And what I think about this is with time. At 9 years old, the universe put Paul in your life. And a lot of this, while it had happened, they knew this will be somebody who will help you in the future get out and have a better life. So it's interesting how when we look back in time at our lives, certain things, it's not linear as much as we think. It's almost quantum, that there were these certain things and people that were there that later we see, wow, we were entangled with them. The past and the present and the future, it's all interconnected.
Yes, and that's it. So 9 years old, I meet him, church camp. He walks out of the cabin, and I'm like, I'm going to marry this guy. So I crush on him.
might not have known that.
He did not know it. He did not know it. I crushed on him through my teens. My family would always tease me because we were family friends. So his parents and my parents became friends. He has an older brother. We would always, socialize together, church after church, and he was a tech nerd. So growing up, he set up our first computer, our first fax machine.
Oh my God. Our first fax machine.
Right?
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And
we're not that old.
Not. But yeah, so he was just the love of my life. I just was like, this guy is so different than my dad, than my brothers, than the men that they want to surround me with. Now, I'm of Middle Eastern background, so with that comes a lot of tradition, wonderful tradition, and some not so good. So I've learned over the years to take the really great stuff from my background and leave the stuff that I don't. And I know we share.
Yeah, we do.
We share some of that.
I know the Middle Eastern background well. Yeah,
yes.
You're right.
And so my dad, it was always, you have to talk to the father if you're going to date the daughter.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Oh,
so there's that patriarchal piece of it.
Not just talk.
No.
Permission. And then they will ask you an inventory of questions.
That part.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly. That part, yeah.
So through the years, I was paraded in front of me lots of Middle Eastern men that were older, and basically your property to that. And it's not in every family. I'm not saying across the board, but the culture and the tradition sometimes lends itself to that. Having said that, Paul was considered a white boy. So he's half Italian and half German. But to my family, it was like, no, that's taboo. You're not going to marry someone outside the culture. Didn't matter his faith. It just mattered, the culture. So having said that, now we're in our late teens. He's 4 years older than me. So finally he sees me as a woman and not just as a little girl. Because for all those years, he's 4 years older than me. We meet at 9 and 13. That's a huge age difference at that point.
Yeah.
Right? So now I'm 19, 20. He's a little bit older, and he sees me as a woman. He says, okay, I'm going to talk to your dad. I'm like, finally, I've loved you for all these years. It's about time.
Good luck.
So, right?
Yeah.
So my dad takes him on a long car ride, sort of Godfather style, we always say, and he comes back and says, okay, your dad says it can't happen. This will never happen. He needs you to marry an Arab man. You'll never be with me, but we can stay friends. So then throughout the years, we continue to be friends. Now I'm 25. So the background of my family is we've now created lots of businesses. We're living in a $1.5 million home in Ann Arbor. We are traveling the world. So I'm feeling myself. I'm thinking, okay, I've come from this abuse. Yes, I'm still being abused, but I'm a little bit more independent, or so I think, which again is a point to victims and survivors of abuse is you might think you're out, but it's a journey. You might think that you've achieved, maybe your age or your circumstances have achieved some sort of freedom, but you're not. And that's what we're trying to show people now with On the Wings is this is a journey, and you have to help and serve these women in getting out.
It's a process, too.
It's a process.
And sometimes you've shared that it can go back and forward. And so you don't want to just think, okay, if I decide today I'm leaving, they're out. You know this very well. And that gives you that leadership credibility to help them.
Yes, to help them. So then I'm 25 and I call him and I say, I'm done. Like, I'm ready to be independent. We can date. And he says, well, I don't think you're as independent as you think you are, but we can try this. So we try it. We don't tell my family. We tell his. And then we basically fall madly and deeply in love within about 60 days. We're just like, we're meant to be. And so he comes to my home, our mansion out in Ann Arbor, and he talks to my dad with me in the room. And he says, I want to marry your daughter. We're going to get married. My dad says, him or us. If you choose him, you'll never see your mom, your siblings, me ever again. If you choose us, then you have to get him out of your life forever because we see now that you're really in love. And if he sticks around, this is going to keep repeating. So you need to X him out. So at the time, again, this is part of the journey. I'm like, this is all I know. I'm 25, but this is all I know.
Oh, no, you didn't?
So
poor Paul.
I said...
He got the boot?
Yeah, he got the boot again. And now I'm going to touch a little bit on faith. He calls me about 2 weeks later and he says, JoJo, well, I was Josephine at the time. He says, Josephine, he says, God, I was on my face, on the floor, on the ground praying. And God says to me, not yet. Now, at the time, I'm like, you're crazy. I'm mad. I want to be with you. God didn't talk to you. I don't know what you're talking about, but you're making this up in your head. Well, this is important because a few years later, we reconnect, and this is how. So at the time, this is my catalyst. So in every leading lady's journey, there's going to be a catalyst, and it's your responsibility to either answer that call or not. And so that was like the end of the end for me. So it took me 3.5 years from that point. But I said to myself, if they're going to take the love, and this is why I say love is so pivotal. If they're going to take the love of my life away from me, then I got to get out of here. I had to find a way out of here. So 3.5 years pass. I start dating a guy from California that I find online. I figured that's my way out of Dodge. I'm going to move to California. This guy comes to see us to meet my family. My dad says, get this guy out of my house. I say, no, I want him to meet the family. Long story short, he takes me by the hair, throws me on the ground, drags me across the room, basically almost throws me down the stairs and says, you're getting him out. This is the last time I let my dad touch me. This is the last time I allow this type of abuse in my life. I said, I'm out. I start sleeping on friends' couches. I find an apartment, that whole 2011 winter, beginning part of the year, and then the summer of 2011, I'm sleeping on people's couches.
And that was a difficult time in the country. We were still coming out of the recession, so you had a bunch of things coinciding.
Yes. And then I, find my way in the world again, jump without a net. I find an apartment. Friends and family furnished the apartment for me. People that were in my corner saying, good for you, getting out. Simultaneously, I go on Match.com because I want to find a date to take to a wedding because I didn't want to go alone. Match.com matches me with Paul.
Oh, my goodness.
As a 96% match. And says, you belong together. And again, when you talk about the quantum reality, this is the universe saying, okay, you two are meant to be, but you're now ready.
Oh my goodness.
So that's our love story. And we eloped on Valentine's Day 2012. We just separated 12 years. We have 2 children and a dog and living the life.
And what I like about this too is this, this is important too, because a lot of times people look at people's lives and relationships and say, oh, they just got lucky. They found the one. And your story is anything but that. It really showed. I mean, I was literally picturing him having to leave the house and you saying, sorry, I can't do this now. So this is multiple times. And it took perseverance. And that's so true in relationships too. It is a marathon. You have to grow. And as you said, you had to become ready to do this. And he had to become the person that was willing to wait. So there's just so many beautiful lessons along this of perseverance, grit, resiliency, and that is so true in life and in leadership. I mean, I think about Walsh College because we were founded by Thomas Edison's accountant. Mervyn Walsh was the accountant for the Thomas Edison Light Company in 1922. So we just celebrated 100 years. So we're 101. And Thomas Edison failed 2,774 times before he invented the light bulb. Had he not continued on, we would not have the lights today, right? So you have to look at life as many times you're going to feel like you're working to, and then when you get past one problem, there's another. So I love your story because in every area, there's a battle, there's a struggle, you overcome and you move ahead and you grow. And then you're ready for your next challenge. And that's where we are now with On the Wings of Angels. You have this amazing nonprofit. In fact, you just hired 2 Walsh interns.
I did. I'm so excited. They're doing so well for us.
Oh, I love hearing
this. Was your idea too. You said, you looked at me one day and you said, you can't possibly do it all. You need to find a team. And of course, we have a wonderful board that adds tremendous value. But there's just like the everyday of an organization. And we're not at the point where we're paying people, but these interns have a passion. When I tell you a passion for what we're doing.
Oh, you told me when they learned, they said, one of them said, I can't do this for credit, but I still want to help you.
I still want to help.
That's amazing.
And it's so amazing. And so, so that brings us to, I think, September, because one of the messages I really think is important to communicate that so many, I think, they see the get rich and they see the successful people. And I think as part of being a leader is what you've just said, which is simply that there are these struggles along the way. And when we face these struggles, we want to give up. I mean, how many times was I like, okay, I'm never going to marry the love of my life. Okay. I thought I was going to at 9 and now this is happening.
This can't happen for me. I'm not ready. I want out. Right. Because that's where pressure comes in. I will tell you, I faced that several times. And it was so, and then what you realize is that's usually the corner right before the breakthrough.
Yes.
But what gets you out, and I know we've talked about this too, is it's not about Suzy. It's not about JoJo.
Yes.
It's about every day we get up with bigger and better things ahead of us. Like I think about, we have over 30,000 alumni, right?
Wow.
We have about 1,200 students. We have 100 employees. Like every day I get up, and that is the incredible responsibility that I have. It is a privilege, yet it's an incredible responsibility. So it doesn't really matter if there are days I don't feel like it or I have a headache. Pop and Excedrin, right? They're not sponsoring this. But I share that because that is irrelevant to how I show up. I'm here for a bigger mission and bigger purpose. I'll figure it out.
Correct.
And you said the same thing. You were like, well, in September, I need to be on the wings of angels. That's really what, because you hit the wall, and then it was like the universe saying, it's now.
It's time.
You have to do this. Yeah.
It's time.
And the net wasn't there. It wasn't like you had millions of dollars in the nonprofit.
No.
You're like, how am I going to make this work?
Right.
Yeah.
And that was the revelation. So we took September, and I just really analyzed my life, and I realized, you know what, this book, the women that we've served, and it takes a specific person to talk about this. This is normally a taboo topic. Like, we don't talk about our culture, and that 1 in every 4 women have experienced abuse, that 1 in every 7 men have experienced some type of domestic abuse. And when you think about those numbers, it's tragic. So you could be in a room with all these people, and 1 in every 4 women has experienced domestic abuse.
And you've seen some of that too, because haven't you shared when you've been working with folks, and we'll talk about the gala that's coming up in April. But and they say, it's interesting you said this, I had an experience, or I knew someone that did. And it opens up this level of, I'm glad I'm not alone.
Yes. And so I realized that in September, when we did have that deep moment of realization. And then in October, we just really went full bore. So On the Wings of Angels provides leadership, provides community, provides resources, provides support for folks that are removing themselves from abuse. And I say that very specifically. We use the phrase that you're removing yourself from abuse because it takes that to get out. Because how many of us know someone that keeps going back to the same abusive situation? It's a cycle. It took me till I was 29 to get out. It just kept, the same thing kept perpetuating. It's not like I was in a bunker somewhere and he stuck me in the basement. I mean, it felt that way, but it wasn't that way. So I could have gotten out before. And I think of that often when I'm relating to these women. You have to hit the rock bottom. You have to
the catalyst. Like you said, that when you gave us that description of being dragged on the floor by your hair, I thought, my goodness, you're like, that's it.
That's it. I'm done.
And really what probably happened was you were getting ready along the way. It's like the tipping point in business.
Yes.
And that was just the very tipping point.
Yes.
And that's what I think people don't always see in life and leadership is it feels like you haven't made any progress, but really you do, because the very moment there's that catalyst, you see all the progress that led up to that.
Yes. And that's what that's how we serve the community. We, when people donate and the sponsors and so forth, we take that money and we literally help people that are getting out. Somebody came to us.
I mean, it's life-saving.
It is.
You never know if that person didn't leave that week or that month or that day, what might have happened, and the generational impact. So what I love about On the Wings of Angels is you're not just lifting one person, you're lifting their entire family, their entire community, and that has such a legacy ripple effect to the future. So there's a lot of folks out there that might say, well, I didn't experience this. I feel for folks that do. I want to help, but I don't feel like I can because I don't have the story. And you're saying, no, you can be an angel.
Yes.
You can lean in and say, it's terrible this happened. We see this all the time in the world with human trafficking and these horrible things we read about. And we're like, I can't even believe that occurred. And we all feel this sense of, I should say we all, but I feel a sense of helplessness sometimes.
Yes.
I'm like, what can I do? But when you shared about this, I said, this is something I can actually do. And I can actually feel like I'm doing something about it. I'm not just going, oh, what a shame. So I would encourage folks to definitely read your book, because even if they haven't had the same journey, there's been something in our past. There's been something in our upbringing. There's been something in our background where we say we had to overcome. And when they hear that, they can go, wow, if you can overcome this, JoJo, then I can certainly work through my fear of public speaking, right? Or my fear of getting a promotion, or I don't know how to balance life and work. They can work through that because the human being is so resilient. And that's what I find so amazing about the women that we're serving. So I spoke with one of them last night.
And we spoke for about 45 minutes. And she was sending me pictures of her son's birthday party, who just turned 3. She has 5 children. And when she came to us, again, she was removing herself. So she was already on the path. We just were a conduit to help, certain things that she needed. And having said that, you talk to these women and this is, like you said, a generational effect. So I said, how's your oldest son doing? Because he's in his late teens. And she said, JoJo, it's so amazing because he saw that what his dad was doing was wrong. And now he's seeing some of that in himself. And he's like, okay, how do I change?
Wow.
So we're getting them in therapy. So basically what we provide is lots of things. It could be mental health. It could be you need some clothes because you just left with the clothes on your back. Okay, we'll get you clothes. You need boots. We helped some people with boots and stuff in the winter.
So it's very focused around what each individual needs.
The specific that they need.
Okay, that's so important too, because help for one person could look different.
Look different. And we have no barriers to entry. So our barrier to entry is a commitment letter. Okay. There's many nonprofits out there that are doing amazing work, and we collaborate and partner with many of them. But some of them have limitations. It could be a faith thing, like you have to subscribe to the faith. It could be they have government dollars, so they don't have as much freedom as we do. It could be, they only cater to certain types of abused victims. We are basically right now an umbrella for all of it, and what we're doing is if we can't help you, we're being a conduit to those that
I love that, a connector. So good. So I want to make sure I ask you this question about the BMW, and then let's talk about how people can get involved with On the Wings of Angels and help. But when we think about quantum leadership, quantum entanglement, this idea that it couldn't be coincidence because it's so connected. It would be so a suspension of logic to think it's coincidence, right? I always think about that. People say, oh, wow, I just had another coincidence happen. I'm thinking, really? No. Talk about the BMW, because everybody's got to be going, what do you mean by the BMW? And how that might have been entangled in life and leadership, and that was also a realization you had and almost a freedom.
So fascinating, this story, because this is when we were also getting closer, you and I, and you were part of that vision of showing me that, okay, this is a bigger picture. And you said to me during that conversation, just that. So when I was in that whole environment in those last years in my 20s, we bought a BMW. BMW was always the car I wanted.
It was what? Tell them about the car.
Yeah. So it was a BMW, white BMW with beige leather, and it was an X5. And it was just the sports car that I wanted. It just, to me, screamed success and screamed independence. Mm-hmm. It was my car. It was in my name. Now, you have to understand how deep that is for those listening, because when you grow up with abuse, nothing is yours.
Right.
You can't, my first bank account, I got beat up because I opened up a bank account in my 20s. Everything is communal. Nothing belongs to you. So that was a very huge thing for me, ownership. So now the deed is in my name. I'm making the monthly payments through the money that I'm making through the family businesses. I pay it off. It's a 5-year payment. I pay it off. So now this is part of my freedom, because I'm thinking, okay, now I have a vehicle. So this was part of the catalyst of I have a vehicle, I'm going to get a job, all of this. And so I go to leave. I pack up all my things. I go to leave I put things in my BMW. My family, my brothers and my dad stand around this BMW in our driveway of our huge mansion, and they basically, arms crossed, say, you're not taking this. And I said, yes, I am. It's my vehicle and it's in my name and I paid for it and it's paid off. Nope, you're not taking it. We're going to stand here. So I think to myself, okay. So my mentor who lived next door, I took her car and, left.
But you left it there. See, and that just shows, even though you were ready to go.
Yes.
The power of the family authority.
Yes.
It is so strong. I mean, I know I didn't have your experience by any means, but I can tell you, I look back at family and say, I can't believe I let them have that. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I was like, what was I thinking?
This is
should never happen now. Yeah.
Never happen now.
You said, I'll have to leave it.
I have to leave it. So it took 3 months of it sitting there and them driving it. And I kept going to go back. Now I think I would have gotten a police escort.
We think it now. I know.
You think it now, right?
Back then you're like, well, this is normal. Yeah.
Right, this is normal. Yeah. And you're trying to reconcile because that string is still tied. And I think that's what we keep repeating.
Well,
is that,
and people, I don't mean to interrupt, but this is so important because, I mean, there are probably people listening that think, okay, but you're supposed to have good relationships with family and it's scriptural, right?
Yes.
And that's the wrestling we do. And I think people need to know that if they are struggling with that, to reach out and that there is, and On the Wings of Angels is a perfect way to do that and say, look, we understand this is confusing, but stick with us. We can help you.
Yes.
And really it comes down to, is that really honoring if you operate that way? We had that conversation, but I know you're in that, I can do both. I can do both, or I can at least have it a little bit.
Yes.
And it's really hard when that separation season has to happen. And let me say, this is an example in entrepreneurship. There's a lot of folks that they're working at a business, they're not happy, they don't feel fulfilled, and they want to start something, they want to do a mission, but they realize, I don't know if I can make that leap. I want to do both. And it really comes down to, many times the universe will put things in our path to reveal where we're not free. Peter Crone said that. You will constantly be faced with people, situations, and circumstances to reveal where you're not free. And when we don't say, okay, look, I'm going to make that jump, I'm going to make that leap, it's okay to do that. Now, it has to be at the right time. And you have to make sure that you can cover your expenses. We're not telling people to just be foolish about this.
Correct.
But many times it requires that faith or that willingness to say, it doesn't matter. I'm not going back. I'm going forward, and I'll find that net.
And I will. And I did.
You did.
And so, and that's very revelatory because that's the whole thing is I thought I needed that. And this ties into why we're telling this story. So I thought, okay, I'm going to leave it. We're going to reconcile. They'll give it to me eventually. I'm going to be best friends with my family again. Because that's how you think when you're getting out. So then they said, okay, listen, we got to deed this car to us because we're not giving it to you. You're not going to ever come get it. So again, as part of my reconciliation, I said, okay, I'll deed it, but I'll deed it to my mom and my sister if you want, but not anyone else. They send me the deed. It's to my dad. I say, you know what? I'm coming to get it right now. They're like, oh, innocent mistake. I'm like, couldn't possibly be innocent, but okay. So they send me a new one. I deed it to my mom and sister, sign it over, notarize it. It's done. But that day that I deeded it, I swore to myself that I would buy a BMW one day to recover that moment. So now fast forward about a year ago, again, almost same time as we get, this is fascinating, same time we get, so December of 22, same time we get approved as a 501c3 for On the Wings of Angels, that month I get a BMW. Gorgeous sedan. I buy it with our own money. It's in my name, not in my husband and mine, just my name.
Because you were working at the mortgage industry at that point.
Correct.
And it was that, and he said, no, it was a good deal. I remember you shared that with me.
It was a great deal. The monthly payment was very small compared to what it could be if you bought a new BMW. It was a used one. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm doing the right thing. Like this is part of my journey. Yay me. So now, fast forward to December, so a year later, almost to the date. So the day before I'd owned it for a year, I got into a car accident. And it was such a deep moment for me because at the end of the day, this was a car that was still tied. I'm going to cry.
Okay. And I remember you called me and we talked.
It was tied to my past and it was tied to my empowerment, or at least I thought. But because it was so tied to my past and the emotions that were there, that meant that part of JoJo was still tied to her past. And you can't go into your future if you're tied to your past. You just can't walk into the future that you were meant for if you still have something that's tying you back here because you think it's going to be your savior, and that
or it's symbolic.
It's
like
symbolic.
There was this sense of justice. I remember you said, and then you're like, I don't even need that anymore.
And so when I got into that accident, I realized that it's like the thing broke, and it was like, okay, you're walking into this service of the community and to women that are getting out, and you can't have anything tied to your past. You can't be like still back here. Like you just, there's a reason that they say that the windshield is bigger than the rear view mirror.
So good. Yes.
And so this just untied me so much from my past to the point of just a catalyst to this On the Wings of just this success.
And I can tell there's just something different about you too, as you had that revelation. And you're so open to growth and self-reflection, JoJo, which is amazing because not everybody is. They would say, no, I'm not going to listen to that.
I'm going to go get another one.
Yeah, exactly. And you said, well, let's see if they can fix it. But it was like, I went back to that scripture, I make all things new again.
Amen.
It's a completely different attachment. When we detach from the things that we thought were important to us, and it's whatever you think. think too. It's totally a value system. I'm not judging anybody, but I loved how you saw, wow, this is something where I'm driving this more now to show them.
Yes.
Versus now, I don't need to do that.
And Suzy, it was the same in the mortgage industry. I got back in the mortgage industry because that was my growing up years. We had mortgage and real estate companies. So in my head, I had to prove that I could still be successful without them.
Right.
And then I realized, but I'm not doing what I'm fulfilled. Like this on the wings, I'm being fulfilled every day.
And you don't even, and you'll find the way. Like what I love about that is it fills you up so much.
Yes.
Those other things, those trappings, they don't do it. They're nice, they're there, but they're not the driver. So,
correct.
Well, JoJo, tell us about what's coming up in April, the banquet for On the Wings of Angels, and then we'll tell folks how they can get involved. And then let's talk about what's happening at Big B too, because what I love about this is businesses are getting excited.
Yes.
I know that there was a restaurant that gave some funds and is like saying, hey, if you come and eat during this time, we'll give a percentage of the proceeds. Because it's so important we build the fund up and On the Wings of Angels. So we build up those wings so we can help women. And it's really amazing impact. So tell us a little bit about the gala and then about the Big B opportunity.
So the gala is in April 28th on Sunday. It's at the San Marino Club. And then we have a VIP meet and greet the evening before at Fogo de Chao.
And I'll be there for both.
We're so excited. And what the gala is it's, again, a huge foundational thing for On the Wings. Most of every ticket and most of every sponsorship is going directly to the bank account of On the Wings so that we can turn around and serve women. No one is on payroll. There's not a lot of overhead funds that we have. We can't legally say 100% of all donations because there's little things here and there.
Yeah.
However, I have to say a very high percentage, more high of a percentage than
most.
Pretty much any nonprofit out there. The gala is going to have three major speakers. We have Taryn Asher from Emmy Award-winning news anchor from Fox 2. We have Carolyn Clifford, another Emmy Award-winning news anchor from Channel 7. She's going to talk about domestic abuse. She's actually a great keynote on that topic, serves a lot of fellow nonprofits in this community for that cause. And then we have Rachel Slauson. Rachel Slauson is a former Miss USA contestant, and she's the president of Grand USA, and that is a competition that's all across the world. Additionally, she was the first openly bisexual competitor. Thank you. I don't know how that word came. It didn't come out. The first openly bisexual competitor for Miss USA across the nation. She experienced domestic abuse, and she's going to tell us her story as well. Very empowering story. We expect to have about 200 folks there. A lot of the community. We have a sponsor, NTech, our local all-female owned and run organization. They're a sponsor. There's several sponsors already, and we're just looking for a great time. We have a live band. The Louis Lee Show is going to be singing and causing great entertainment. So it's going to be a wonderful evening.
And they can check that out on the website if they go to On the Wings of Angels, OOTWA.org.
Correct.
Yeah, perfect.
Or onthewings.org if it's easier.
Onthewings.org.
Yes, onthewings.org.
And then in March, or when is it happening? Okay, Big B, yeah.
So March, which is Women's Empowerment Month and Women's History Month, Big B, as well as several other folks in the community, including Fogo de Chao, Carrabba's, and some others, are contributing a portion of their proceeds on March 8th, which is International Women's Month, to On the Wings of Angels. We didn't ask for a specific percentage. This was out of the generosity of their hearts, but a portion of every cup bought at Big B's, as well as every meal at Carrabba's and Fogo, will go towards On the Wings.
That's wonderful. Donation. And then, JoJo, where can folks get your book? I know I got it on Amazon. Is that Amazon?
Amazon would be the best. If you want an autographed copy, I'm happy to send you an autographed copy. Just look me up, and I will mail you an autographed copy as well.
Thank you so much. I know we could talk for hours on this, Suzy. And I would love to, but I really wanted to highlight a couple things. One is, your journey has just been an incredible inspiration for me and for so many leading ladies out there as they're working through their lives, their professions, their families, all of the things that make us great. And I think it's just so well timed for you to be the very first leading lady on the Leading Ladies podcast. But thank you so very, very much, JoJo. We're so happy to have you. We're so happy that you're at Walsh in our ecosystem and that you have interns working for you. So that's wonderful too. And just so grateful that you're here. So thank you for sharing so openly, so vulnerably your story. And thank you for being a leading lady.
Thank you, Suzy. I just have to say for all those listening that this is one of the most incredible humans that I know, especially in this community. Suzy, you've really just helped me. You've supported me. You've believed in me. And I think you need to, for those listening, you need to surround yourselves with those folks that do believe in you and are leaders, true leaders. You are you exemplify what a true leader looks like.
Wow.
And so for that, I thank you for that.
Thank you very, very much. And I'll end it with a Walsh plug, as I always do.
Yes.
We actually educated the very first woman CPA in Michigan, Grace Drimmer at Walsh. And we've had a history of really educating and empowering women. So that's why it's so perfect to have this in March. And it was so perfect to have you. So thank you so much, JoJo.
Thank you, Suzy.